I will start my presentation right now. I just started the recording. Let me share my screen. And oops. All right, so today the webinar is a final project webinar to summarize what we have done and what we have learned for a project called Leveraging Mobility Data Analytics to Identify Mobility Hubs in Florida. That's the project title. It's a project funded by the Florida Department of Transportation. We have a slightly different title for this webinar because I think this title, after doing the whole work, this title reflects better the work that we have done and the key things we have achieved. So as I mentioned very early on, I'm Jacob, and this project, we had the benefit of having Chris and Kristen as the project managers. They supported a lot, they helped a lot throughout the process. Earlier on, Gabe Matthews and David Sherman were managing the project. But I guess they like the project a lot and they like to share the love. So we had Kristen taking over later on. As you see in the previous slide, we have FAU logo there. So this is the whole research team on this project. We have several undergrad students and PhD students, Duanya Lu, Eliana Duarte, Mateo Nader, Anran Zheng, Ksenia Vilichiko. Oops, I forgot to change the other names. That's embarrassing. Louis Merlin, John Rennie, and Serena. I made the slide pretty late yesterday, sorry. And the project stakeholders, we have the luxury to have City of Gainesville, Florida District 2 and District 4. Derek, Debbie, you see them joining us today. Jesus and Janelle, they helped a lot. And District 4, we have Lisa Mack and Vibet Hay supporting the project. So today's presentation, I will have 4 components. The first part, we'll talk about mobility hub definition and typology. Second is talking about the method that we have created for identifying mobility hub sites. And then third, we will demonstrate how we apply the method in the city of Gainesville. We have also applied this in the city of West Palm Beach, but due to the limit of time, I won't go in depth into that. But this project, this method we have created can be easily applied across US communities because we use publicly available data sets. And finally, validation refinement of the results through survey and crowdsourced input. I think this is, to me, the most exciting, most innovative part of this project, because you may see a lot of previous work that have done similar methods, but they lack a solid validation refinement process. So I want to highlight this part. All right, so definition and typology. A lot of you may have already seen this picture before. It's a cartoon mock-up of a mobility hub developed by Como UK. And the mobility hubs, usually we think of them having a variety of mobility components like car sharing, bike sharing, scooter sharing, and have transit systems supporting this location, and also a bunch of other private options that people may use to connect with these mobility hubs. So mobility hubs, they are the physical location that supports seamless integration of multiple transportation modes. They can include a bunch of amenities or services to facilitate multimodal travel. One thing I would like to emphasize, not everybody agree with this, but we like to believe that mobility hubs should be anchored by public transit systems. So just about a week ago, Adam Cohen, a thought leader in innovative mobility, asked this question, like, how do you define intermodal passenger facility? I thought this is interesting. I won't let you read everything because the limit of time, but he asked a lot of good questions, like in this new mobility era, how do we think about intermodal passenger facility? So I want to add this slide to discuss this a little bit. So we have been using the term intermodal passenger facility for decades. And now recently you heard of the term mobility hubs. What's the difference? First of all, I would like to say these two has a lot of similarities. They both try to facilitate multimodal travel. They are strategic nodes in the transportation network for facilitating transfers across different modes. But there are a few key things that I think distinguish mobility hubs from intermodal passenger facility. The first one is the reason we use mobility hubs, I think, largely because we are dealing with different travel modes right now. We are talking about new mobility options like shared mobility, Uber, Lyft, microtransit, and micromobility options, and also electric mobility like EV charging. And also traditional intermodal passenger facility, there is not too much emphasis on the digital infrastructure. But when we talk about mobility hubs, because of the new mobility options, we need to have good integration with digital infrastructure, like traveler information, mobility as a service, this type of digital infrastructure. And then a very important aspect of mobility hubs is their placemaking function. When we talk about intermodal passenger facility, usually they take up some part of land, and that part of land tend to have very little interaction with the surrounding environment. But mobility hubs could be helping the land use in nearby or supported by the nearby land use. So the placemaking aspect of mobility hubs is worth to be highlighted. And lastly, I think when we talk about intermodal passenger facilities, they tend to be pretty large in scale, but mobility hubs, they could be large, they could also be small. So I will show you a typology that we like to use to classify mobility hubs in a second. So here are three images showing you how we like to define different levels of mobility hubs. Like the large scale, regional scale mobility hubs could be a Union Station type of hub. Like this is an example of the Stratford Station in London. And it takes up a lot of land. It has all sorts of mobility options available there. But when we talk about mobility hubs, we also can think of smaller scale hubs. The smallest would be neighborhood level hub, which are just a bus stop or a few bus stops clustered nearby with a few other first mile, last mile connectivity options or car sharing. So you can think of them as just improved bus stops. And then in the middle, we think we can define a category called district level hubs. And these are like somewhere in between this neighborhood level and regional level. They don't have as many options or the land size occupied by regional level hub, but they also tend to have more amenities and more options available, more travel options available at the district level hub. So if we want to highlight several bullet points that describe each level, here's a slide doing that. So as I said, neighborhood level hub is basically minor transit stations with basic modes and amenities. Depending on the context, the available new mobility options could be different. It could be car sharing, it could be shared micromobility. And its main function is to connect residential areas with the transit network. And then district level could be more significant transit stations with more travel modes and amenities, and they help provide access to key destinations. And regional level, basically they are the major depots with all sorts of travel options, and they can facilitate long distance multimodal travel. So here is how we conceptualize the typology, different levels. You may, if you have looked into the mobility hub research, there are researchers defining them in different ways. But here is the hierarchy that we think that's helpful for people to understand their typology. And when we talk about mobility hubs, developing them, I think commonly there are three major goals that we aim to achieve from mobility hub development. First one is to serve multimodal travel needs. Second is to enhance first mile, last mile connectivity and facilitate seamless transfers. And finally, we need to consider how to make the development and make the transportation system equitable and accessible for everybody. And these three goals are important to keep in mind because they inform how we develop our methodology and how we select our criteria for selecting ideal mobility hub sites. And here is an image from the city of Boston that they believe a mobility hub may include these features. These are the common features, but depending on the city, depending on the context, there are definitely other features that can be included. One thing I want to note is when we talk about mobility hubs, they include not only the transportation options, they should also contain the non-mobility hub, non-mobility components like the parklets, public art for placemaking purposes, and traveler information, branding, other things to support its attractiveness and its placemaking function. So with that first section to briefly introduce you into this concept and the goals. Now, I want to share with you how our team have developed this novel method for mobility hub site selection. So we call it a multi-criteria analytical framework, and it includes 5 major components. The first one is when we think about locating some infrastructure, we need to think about what criteria we should select, which are helpful to think about when we try to collect data to inform the site identification. And then based on the criteria, we can collect data to compute indicators and use those indicators to develop a mobility hub index. And based on the mobility hub index, we can then identify a network of mobility hubs. The network could include different mobility hub levels, like the neighborhood, district, and regional level hubs that I just talked about. And then the fourth step would be when we develop mobility hubs, we need to think about what are the planning priorities, what are the policy goals, and different priorities and different goals could lead to different planning scenarios. So how do we generate results on the different scenarios? And finally, the first 4 steps are mainly data-driven quantitative approach for getting the mobility hub network. But this is kind of like more technocratic top-down approach. But when we try to implement mobility hubs, we need to engage stakeholders. We need to engage the local community. So we need to have a validation process to solicit community inputs and get their input to refine the results. So this is the framework that we thought about, having these 5 components. This slide contains more details, but I won't go through them right now because we will get into these components in more detail in later slide. So this whole method, this whole framework, I think our team believe we have our uniqueness compared to the existing methods. We have some novelty in this approach compared to what's out there. So I want to highlight 5 things. The first thing is the unit of analysis. So our approach focuses on transit stops. We think mobility hubs should be anchored by transit system, and the location should be at transit stops. So some previous research, they often focus on area unit because of data collection is easier, and it's easier to compute the mobility hub index values. but the area unit often lack the specific, lack the actual the area unit cannot immediately result in actionable insight because a block group or a census tract could be pretty large, and then cities and agencies still don't know what are the specific exact locations for developing mobility hubs. The second thing is existing method often don't distinguish typology, but we have an algorithm, have a method for distinguishing it. And then the third thing is, as we talked about earlier, mobility hubs should have a key function of facilitating first mile, last mile connectivity, but a lot of the existing methods we reviewed don't incorporate this consideration. So we have come up with the innovative matrix to take this into account. And then our method mainly use public available data sets. So that means that the method can be readily applied across US communities, in Miami or in Boston, everywhere, in Florida and beyond. And lastly, we have incorporated a validation refinement process through crowdsourced community input. So first of all, unit of analysis, the first novelty. Let me quickly show you how we did this. So we think mobility hubs should be built at transit stops. But when you look at a transit network, the stops, they are in thousands in numbers, and some stops are close to each other. So when we try to identify the unit of analysis, like it doesn't make sense to consider if there are several bus stops located next to each other. It doesn't make sense to don't consider them together. So what we have done here is before we analyze the bus stops or transit stops, we apply a DB scan clustering algorithm to group adjacent transit stops. So there are two parameters set in the process. So like you can imagine, maybe there are 2,000 transit stops in a city, but then after clustering, we got like 800 bus stop clusters. And those clusters will be like the mobility hub candidate locations. And once we get that bus stop cluster, then our methodology would point to the next step to compute the scores for each criteria we have selected for site selection. We believe there are 5 criteria important in the selection of mobility hubs. The first criteria is transit ridership and supply. The second criteria is first mile, last mile connectivity. Third one is, do the candidate site has supporting infrastructure like bicycling and sidewalk, etc. And then the fourth criteria is socioeconomic considerations. We want to build mobility hubs at locations that benefit multimodal travelers. And then lastly, mobility hubs should facilitate access to key destinations. So are they in accessible location? So the 5 criteria, once we have established them, then we also know the unit of analysis, then we can get the data together to compute 5 criteria scores. And then based on the scores, we can then go further to identify mobility hubs. But the way we constructed the scores is that for each criteria, we would have a set of indicators to measure that criteria. Because when you talk about transit ridership and supply, for example, it contains 2 aspects, both the existing demand, the ridership aspect, also the supply side. Like first mile, last mile connectivity, we want to measure the existing first mile, last mile trips happening at the candidate site. We also want to measure the gap. So actually, this is a pretty important innovative measure we have come up with. So I would like to highlight this measure a little bit to give you a better sense what we are thinking here. So sorry, the first mile, last mile. Get a little bit water. the first mile, last mile gap, the way we conceptualize is, let's conceptualize every location in a city. These locations, some of them are well served by the existing transit network. Some of them are somewhat far away from the transit stops. So when we think about these locations, we want to measure their distance to the nearest transit stop. We also want to account for the number of jobs, number of residents currently on that location. Because if it's a very remote location, that don't have a lot of activities on them, they are far away from transit stops, we will be less concerned about the last mile, first mile gap compared to another more densely populated location, but has no transit stop nearby. So when we compute this gap score, first mile, last mile gap score, we have 4 steps. First, we try to account for the number of jobs and population in each location. When I said location earlier on, we have used census block to indicate the specific locations. And then we compute the distance from the block centroid to the nearest transit stop. And we multiply these two to get the score. And then we aggregate the score at the transit stop cluster level. Again, as I mentioned in the previous slide, our unit analysis is transit stop cluster. That's the candidate sites for mobility hubs. So we compute this measure, aggregate them to the unit analysis we have, and then the next thing is we get all these basic indicators. We then weight them and scale them to compute the criteria score. So this first component here is mainly to get all the data ready for computing the mobility hub index. Like the detailed indicators, you don't need to know them all. Just trust us that we have thoughtfully aggregate them together, combine them into scores for each criteria that we have selected earlier on. And then now we have 5 criterion scores. The next thing is, how do we use these scores, these values, to develop a mobility hub index that can inform our selection of mobility hub locations? So basically, we are thinking we need to figure out a way to combine these variables into a single value. And then the way to combine them is definitely applying weights to them. And the weights applied to each criteria score will depending on the planning scenario. I will go into that a little bit later. But the idea is we first, again, the whole analytical framework is we first select the criteria, like the concepts, what are the things that matter in determining mobility hubs. Then we collect the appropriate data for operationalize each criteria, each concept. And then we combine these 5 criteria scores into a single mobility hub index, which we will leverage for site selection. So this is the framework for the method. And then planning scenarios and criterion weights. On this in this table, these columns, they are the 5 criteria that we just talked about, like 5 criterion scores. We imagine we have obtained them, but when we think about different planning scenarios, we may apply different weights to these criteria. Like if you think everything is equally important, then you would apply equal weights, 0.2 to each variable. But if you think we should prioritize promoting equity, then you may prioritize this equity measure. If you think we should improving first mile, last mile connectivity, then you would prioritize the weight of this first mile, last mile connectivity criteria, and then have the other 4 has less of a role. So this is the logic behind how we obtain different results for different planning scenarios. And this is a slide showing you like under the equal weight scenario, how we obtain the mobility hubs. So basically, as I said, we have 5 scores. Each of them have a weight of 0.2, get this index, and then we visualize this index on the screen. Like the red dots are the higher values, the blue dots are the smaller values. And then based on the values, we can then have a methodology, have a method for selecting a network of mobility hubs. The methodology works like this. First step, let's select all the existing mobility hubs because they are already built or they are already planned. Then the second step is because when some mobility hubs are already built, they already serve their surrounding area. You don't want to have like duplicated. You don't have. Ideally, we want to minimize overlaps because you want to maximize the coverage. The resources are limited, so when we can have limited number of mobility hubs, you want them to serve the broadest geographic area as possible. So because of this logic, the second step is let's exclude all potential hubs within a certain mile of the selected hubs from consideration. So this X measure, this depends on the context. Like it could be just a mile. In that case, then you would assume the service coverage area of a mobile hub is like a mile. If actually 0.5 mile, because we need to add the 2 mobility hubs together. If you think they can serve a larger area, then this value could be larger. So in Gainesville, I think we settled with 1.5 miles. So that kind of assume each mobility hub will serve 0.75 to 1 mile ish of the locations from them. And then the third step is we will after excluding some hubs, we will select the hub with the highest mobility hub index as the next one. And then the last step is we will keep repeating this too until we reach the service coverage level threshold, or we reach the total number of hubs that we have set. Like imagine the city wants to have mobility hubs serving 70% or 60% of the transit service area. Or like the city says, we only have budget for 10 mobility hubs or 12 mobility hubs. Once you reach that number, we don't have the resources to build more. So we need to have a stop point, and that's the purpose of step 4. Visually, how this works is, let's see in the city of Gainesville. We have 3 existing hub locations that the city has already developed or planned. These are the blue, the green circles. The circle, I mean, like the centroid is the actual hub location, and the circle indicate the service area for each mobility hub. So we have already the 3 hubs built by the city. We will select the 4th one. This one is among all the potential hub locations. It has the highest mobility hub score. And then we select the next one. We select, keep selecting. Like once we selected a hub location, all the candidate sites within its service area will be excluded, and then we'll keep searching the next one with the highest mobility hub score until we reach the target set up in step 4. So with this method being developed, everything being established, we have written code or ArcGIS toolbox to implement everything efficiently, and it can automate a lot of the process. We applied the method in the city of Gainesville, also in West Palm Beach. But as I said, I will only show you the results for the city of Gainesville. Let me quickly go through some key results in the process. I saw a question. Maybe this is a good time. Oops, Eric need to jump in another meeting. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. I can pause anytime. I know it can be boring to listen in for a very long period of time. So maybe like this is a good time to pause for a quick second in case anybody has questions. Anybody? All right, so looks like everybody is engaged. So we'll keep going. So for City of Gainesville, we compile all the data sets needed. We compute the criteria scores. As I said, we have 5 criteria. We got the 5 criteria scores, and then this is one example showing you how we obtain the mobility hub index under the equal weight scenario. And then based on the mobility hub index, then we select a network of mobility hubs. In Gainesville, after discussing with Debbie, Jesus, and others, we think like 12 hubs is a good number to focus on. So we stopped the algorithm when it reached 12 mobility hubs. And the next thing I want to explain to you is how do we determine the typology? Like now we have 12 hubs, but which of them should be neighborhood hub, district hub, or regional hub? So here is how we solve this problem. First of all, this method shown to you until now allows us to identify hubs without telling you which is their typology. So we thought, okay, let's assume all hubs are neighborhood hubs first. And then after identifying all the potential neighborhood hubs, we then select from these neighborhood hubs which ones will become district hub and which ones will become regional hub. And this is something that needs to be discussed with local stakeholders, like how many regional hubs there should be, how many district hubs there should be in the study area. As I said, we think 12 hubs is a good number. And we thought 3 district hubs plus 1 regional hub will be good. So we would have 8, 3, 4 combination for the City of Gainesville. So that means like when we implement the algorithm, we should set neighborhood hub as 12, the district hub as 4, because each lower level will include the number of hubs at the higher level. So here is the numbers we have selected. And then the next thing is how do we distinguish, how do we select the district and regional hub? Our thoughts are when we think about district and regional hubs, they tend to have larger coverage areas. They would serve different travel modes. So in the algorithm I just described earlier, you see a lot of weighting, a lot of computation of indicators. So we would implement some revisions to those process so that we get a district level mobility hub index and regional hub index. And then based on the district and regional hub index, we will first select the district hub. So like Gainesville, we select 4 district hub, and then among the 4, we will identify one of them to be a regional hub. So in the end, we get 12 hubs, 8, 3, 1 combination. So this is how the process works. And we also talked about like we should have different results on the different planning scenarios. So as I mentioned earlier, we have 6 planning scenarios: equal weights, enhancing transit, enhancing first mile, last mile connectivity, leveraging existing bike path infrastructure, promoting equity, finally enhancing accessibility. And under different planning scenario, the results will be slightly different. You see a lot of overlaps here, but you also see like the regional, district, and neighborhood level hubs, their assignment could be different. So in the end, basically in the City of Gainesville, we identified 17 mobility hub candidate sites based on the consideration of the planning scenario. Like each scenario have 12 hubs, but because of overlaps, we will have 17 unique locations. Luis, you have a question?
I just wanted to make sure I understood. So you've identified the district mobility hubs, and then you rescore them with different weights. And by rescoring them with different weights, you're able to identify which ones are the district and the regional?
Yeah, like so in like when we did this process, you can think of it computing neighborhood hubs, neighborhood hub index first. But when we think about identifying district level mobility hubs, we can implement revisions to how we compute these criteria in schools, right? So there are some changes in these 5 layers here. And then when they are combined into the district level mobility hub index, you will see different results for the district level hub index. So that's how we select them. Hope this is helpful. Thanks for the question, Louis. All right, so if no other questions, let's keep going. We have 17 unique locations identified for the city of Gainesville. And then this is something that Debbie and TSUS can take for consideration for implementation in the future. But before they do that, they probably want to get more input from the community, from the travelers in city of Gainesville to see how they think about the results. So what we did next is to validate and refine the results through crowdsourced community input. Basically, we have we develop a survey, and the survey has an innovative interactive mapping component, which I will show you in a second. But to recruit respondents, to get people engaged, we use a variety of means. Gainesville RTS kindly help promote the survey on the website and on their app, and also display it in digital screens throughout the city. We have also held a few workshops so that we can get people's input on mobile hub location. So this is Alana presenting a group of UF students, and then we also have students going in the field to give out tablets so that people waiting at bus stops can fill out the survey. And for the city of Gainesville, by the way, this picture is actually in West Palm Beach. This is not Gainesville. I would love to have a real line in Gainesville, but we don't. The respondents, we got over 1,000 responses from the city of Gainesville, but after like deleting invalid responses, we have about 500, I believe. We offer like incentive in the form of every 25th respondent will receive $50 gift card. So that creates incentive for people to abuse the system a little bit. We tried our best. Still, like we cannot prevent some invalid responses. So we had to go through a very deep data cleaning process to keep only 500-ish of the 10,000 complete, the 1,000 complete responses. So the distribution of the age, gender, and student status is shown on the screen. Like about half of them are male, slightly less females, and majority of the respondents are between 19 to 30 years old. This is a college town, lots of students, so that's expected, and more than half are students. But you also see like they are a good chunk of residents, not non-student, participating in the survey. And then in terms of the income vehicle ownership for the non-students, here the question asking about their household income. You see like we have pretty good representation from different income groups. 27% with the household income less than 25,000. And then most people have a vehicle, but about 30% don't have. And for the students, including like UF students, Santa Fe College students, we don't ask their income because like when you ask income, most of them will report 0, and that's not helpful. So we ask about their living expenditure as an indicator of their income level, their families' income levels. And then we ask about their car ownership. A lot of the students in Gainesville has mopeds, so we ask about that. About half have either a car or a moped, and some of them have both. And we ask people like, what are the existing travel patterns, what travel modes they use. This is a busy slide, but mainly here are two main things to look for. First, we observed that our respondents, over 50% of them use bus very frequently, and about 40% are micromobility users. They either use bikes, e-bikes, or e-scooter, and 30% are shared bike, shared e-scooter, shared e-bike users. So we have a pretty multimodal traveler population in the participants. And then these sets of questions, we ask them, how do they think about mode choice when they travel? Like, would transit be an option they even consider when they travel? And then we follow up by asking several questions regarding like when they have considered taking transit for their travel, but end up using a different travel mode. And finally, if people selected, like, yes, they have considered using transit, but end up using a different mode, we ask them, was the first mile, last mile connectivity issue and barrier for their decision making? So the three questions in sequence helping us understand, do people consider using transit for their travel? And was first mile, last mile connectivity an issue that prevent them using transit for their trips? So we found that most respondents do consider using transit, and over 50% of them often ended up not using transit, even though they considered using it. And then over 3/4 believe distance to the nearest bus stop is an important factor that influence the decision making. So the previous slides give us a basic understanding of the travelers' characteristic, the respondents, their social economics and their existing travel behavior. So in the next sets of questions, we ask about the mobility hub results. So the first question we ask there is, where do they think mobility hubs should be built at? So basically, the options, we design them in a way that correspond to the planning scenarios we have in mind. Because different people may have different opinions, and we want to get a sense like which criteria do they prioritize more. So as I said, we have 5 criteria, but we also have a equal weight option. So each respondent would be allowed to select 2 of the 6 options. And then by observing the options they have selected, we have a better sense which planning scenario should the city and transit agency prioritize. So in the end, we found out most respondents tend to believe that enhancing transit and also like promoting accessibility should be the 2 main criteria. And we also asked them, if mobility hubs are built, would you use them? If the network is implemented, would they use mobility hubs? And over like almost everybody said yes, and over 60% believe that the availability of mobility hubs will make them use transit more. So here is a slide showing you like what are the features that people value more for mobility hub implementation. Again, busy slides, but the bullet points at the bottom shows you like the important elements. So parking space for private cars, somewhat surprisingly, is the most important factor. Like the feature that people think are the most important. And then micromobility parking and ride-sharing pickup drop-off zones. Those are the second and third features ranked by the respondents. And then regarding the non-mobility features, people think traveler information, safety features like lighting at 911 kiosks, and shelter and seating. Those are important features. And one thing that you may notice is that the non-mobility features, like a higher percentage of people think of them as very important compared to the mobility features. At the beginning, we thought this is a bit surprising, but when you think more about this, like we have diverse traveler groups. Some people, even though we listed like 6 options here, each individual probably only use like 2 or 3 options listed here. But for the non-mobility features, they benefit everybody. So I think that explains why we observe the non-mobility amenities and features to be very important at mobility hubs. So I guess the key lessons here is when we plan for mobility hub network, think beyond the travel mode to be served. We also need to think about the customer experience, user experience, amenities available at mobility hubs. And so this is the most exciting part of the survey to us. So, if you are bored already, I ask for your attention for this part because you won't be disappointed by what we have done here. So I have shown you we have identified 17 mobility hub candidate sites in the city of Gainesville, and each respondent was asked to select the criteria they think are important for locating mobility hubs, and that will correspond to 2 scenarios displayed to their screen. And this is one planning scenario. Like you see, like 12 hubs. Each planning scenario in Gainesville has 12 hubs. We displayed 2 sets of maps to the respondents. In this result, we didn't distinguish the hub level because it's kind of hard to implement using JavaScript. Also, we think it's not necessary as most people are somewhat familiar with the area. So we display the quantitative GIS derived results and ask people 3 sets of questions. Actually, we have a video that Ksenia have recorded that shows you how to do how we ask the questions. So I will just play the video. I want to make sure everybody can hear it. If you, Louis, can you let me know if you can hear the sound in a second?
Sure.
Oh, you did. Okay, cool.
We can't hear it.
You can't? All right, that's not good. But given the limit of time, actually, let me skip this. I will attach a link later on. Let me explain it myself. So basically, we ask 3 sets of questions. We first ask people before we show these results, we ask people if a mobility hub will be built in the city, where do you think the hub should be? So they can type in any locations on the like using the Google address API. And then the second set of questions we ask people, okay, among the 12 hub locations, like which ones do you think you will use, and select up to 3. So they can click on these markers there and let us know which ones they like. And following that, we also ask a question. Okay, among the locations you see, do you want to suggest any movements? Like some people see like a hub is proposed here, but maybe they think it doesn't make sense to be there. They could click on this marker and then move it to any location they want. So basically, we collect people's opinion on the mobility hub results we have identified early on. And here are some quick results. So first of all, each respondent would indicate on the map like 3 locations they think make sense. And each black dot is a location that a respondent has indicated. So if you take a look at the heat map, UF and Butler Plaza and downtown Gainesville plus Santa Fe College area are popular locations. some people also indicate mobility hub locations outside of the city boundary. And then for the second set of questions, the popular mobility hub sites liked by respondents. Don't look at the numbers. The numbers are on the screen are the code for each hub. They are the ID for each hub. It's the color that matters. The darker, the redder, that means more people prefer those locations. You can see like most people end up selecting the hub locations in more central aspect, in more central area of the city. And then lastly, suggested movement. So this map is a bit busy, but focus on two things. First is the color. The darker the color, that indicates more people want to suggest a movement to that location. So this is totally different compared to the previous slide, because you see that the hubs located in the central areas of Gainesville were liked by people, and they were fewer people suggesting movements to those hub locations. It's the locations in the peripheral area of the city that more people suggest movement. So you see darker colors in these hub locations. The prices, what's in the bracket is the average distance of the movement. So if you see a larger distance, that means people want to move it further from the original location. And how we visualize that is, this is the, let's say this is the original hub selected by our method, but then somebody move it here, another person move it here, another person move it here and here, and we compute the average distance. So these numbers means the distance. And there are different reasons why people suggested this movement. Here are the results for the 6 planning scenarios. And here's a summary of the results for the 17 candidate sites. We basically describe the times they've been identified as a hub on the different level, and also the community inputs represented as the frequency of they being selected as desirable, frequency of being moved, and average distance being moved. So then based on the results, we suggested how Gainesville should move forward with mobility hub development. And due to limit of time, I will finish this slide and save a few minutes for questions. So to wrap up everything, the project develops a mobility hub tool that allows users to identify mobility hubs under various planning scenarios using a data-driven approach. But we also incorporated innovative interactive survey, interactive mapping exercise and survey to crowdsource community inputs that can both validate the data-driven approach and refine it. So we found that the crowdsourced inputs confirm the validity of our approach, because the results do seem to make sense to most people, but they also help us learn additional insights. And the approach is mainly based on public available data, so they can easily used by all US cities and agencies. With that, I want to conclude by telling you, like, we have resources based on this project, developed from this project. We have a project website. We have ArcGIS story map, giving more accessible description of the project. And for implementing the tool, there is a GitHub repository where we have stored the Python code and also the ArcGIS toolbox that analysts can use. Now it's time for questions and comments. Thank you so much for your attention, everybody. Well, it took me 55 minutes almost.
Hi, Jacob, it's Debbie. I have to hop leave, but I have another meeting. But are you gonna share the slides?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Debbie. All right, anybody questions? Again, the webinar is recorded, so I will post the webinar link. Will upload it to YouTube or somewhere and post it on the project website.
Yeah, so.
And the slides will be shared with everybody.
If anyone has a question, they should go ahead of me because I don't have a question. I just want to reiterate what I see as the truly innovative aspects of the project. First, I think focusing on bus stops as the locations of mobility hubs, I think that's a major innovation over focusing on census blocks or census, it's because that's really where we want to put the mobility hubs. Creating a general criteria, the general method that can be used nationwide, I think is very important. The first mile, last mile, it's a little subtle, and I'm not sure I would have gotten it if it was my first time seeing it, but it's basically the concept is we're trying to help the people who don't have good access to transit now, right? Prioritize people who don't have good access to transit now, help them, reach a transit stop by maybe a bike or scooter share. And then getting that last part, which you said, which is getting community validation in an interactive way through a survey. I think all four of those are truly innovative aspects of the project. So I just want to kind of second that point of view.
Thanks, Louis. So,
can I add
John,
one thing?
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, so sorry I joined a few minutes late, but I was the chair and Louis is on the committee, of the land use and transportation committee for TRB. I think it's actually called the Economic Development and Land Use Committee. Anyway, this tool is driven by land use factors, right? And that's a very important dimension that we often talk about in, the need for when it comes to transit planning, but we don't necessarily always do that. And so my gut feeling has been that a lot of mobility hubs, have been determined based on gut feeling and gut instinct over the years. But what this tool does is it does fundamentally connect land use and transportation factors together to move that from saying okay, this is maybe a gut feeling as to where a mobility hub should be because multiple buses come together, or maybe there's a train station, to actually really officially and formally factoring in those land use factors that are about that last mile, because the last mile connectivity is really driven based on land use, more so in many ways than even transportation.
Thanks, John.
So I do have one question, which is this will be presented at TRB.
Yeah, we got we submitted a paper to TRB and got accepted. So I think Eliana will represent the team to present because she is the lead author for the paper.
I have a question.
Please go ahead.
The cities like Gainesville and also West Palm Beach, and I had asked about Delray because I saw one of your maps had the city of Delray. These have major urban cores. Have you tested this on any cities that are more just urban sprawl, don't have that real big city center? Example would be the city of Port St. Lucie. Does not really have, there are certain areas, but there's no downtown per se, and how that impacts the selection of these mobility hubs.
That's a great point. We actually have tested the tool for what's the county name for West Palm Beach again?
Palm Beach County.
Right, Palm Beach County. So we did tested the tool for the whole county, and it's big. And here are the results for the whole county. And you can see that this, because of the criteria we have selected, the hubs do end up being more urban and central locations. But if a more rural suburban community wants to figure out how to identify their mobility hubs, they could apply the methodology and only focus on the potential hub locations in that specific community. So I do think that the tool is flexible and adaptable to various contexts.
What I want to add to what Jacob said is that there's actually a fair number of discretion points in how you use the tool, and that is, one is how wide you set the area between hubs, and the other is how you set the weights. How important is accessibility versus equity versus bicycling infrastructure. So in other words, there's ways to calibrate it for different places. It's a general framework. And so if, you know, a particular place like St. Lucie has different priorities, you can calibrate the model to fit those priorities.
Also, Jacob, while he was sharing those maps, I don't know if you can share that map again, maybe zoom in on one of the scenarios for Palm Beach County. But most of Palm Beach County is suburban, and so it did pick up a lot of mobility hubs in suburban locations. And are you able to share that, Jacob?
1 second. Let me actually upload the. I'm uploading the slide, so you can use the slide. It's in a very later location. I do this, John, because I have a class at 10:45. I need to run for my class. I really apologize, everybody. It took much longer than I expected to present everything. I mean, like, I am very excited about the project because I think our team has done a great job. And so I will let you guys keep the conversation. But before I go, I want to thank everybody, Kristen, Chris, and Louis, John, Serena, and definitely my excellent research assistants for helping with this project. And we do hope that the tool can be used across the US.
Hey, Jacob. Oh, this is Chris Bogglesworth. Before you go, I really appreciated the excellent presentation. This is really great. I want to thank you for all your hard work and efforts. You know, we're very excited about this at, you know, the department. Hey, could you send me a PDF copy just whenever you get a chance, or just the presentation so I could put it in our project files? I know you're going to send it out, but okay.
Yeah,
all right.
absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right, I will need to leave and make Louis the host. Talk to you guys later.
Thank you so much, Jacob.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lucien, I just wanted to wrap up by saying that, you know, the mobility hubs that we picked up in Palm Beach County certainly include places that are what would be considered downtown locations like West Palm or Delray, but it also works in any place. You know, the tool, you know, could work in you know, in St. Lucie County, or, you know, really more smaller towns or rural areas. Generally, you know, like what I think it picks up, you know, just from observation and having worked on this project, you know, is the nexus between transportation, like bus routes and you know, what exists today, and then also, thank you, Louis, commercial centers. So like if you look here at this map, it's a little, you know, fuzzy, but you could kind of, you know, see that there are places to the west of I-95 and a lot of mobility hubs to the west of I-95 that you see kind of are circled with some red, you know, underneath, right? And so those are locations that, again, I'd have to dig in a little bit closer because I can't really see as closely. But even in Belglade, for example, if you could see out west, you see Belglade. So now this is like, could be a useful regional tool in this case to identify, you know, like Belglade should have maybe 2 mobility hubs. However, you could zoom in on Belglade, right? And then run the analysis just on that particular community. And it will tell you like where within that community would be the best location. So it kind of works on different geographic scales, which is very useful.
I just wanted to add and underline a point that Jacob made kind of at the beginning about these hubs being able to provide digital infrastructure and placemaking. So like right now, after the storms that we've had in Florida, in Port St. Lucie, they are using some bus stops as temporary charging stations for like your cell phone, that kind of thing. So to the extent that these mobility hubs could be developed, they can serve multiple purposes and, you know, support disaster recovery or, you know, other purposes, economic purposes with placemaking and so forth.
You know, Serena, it just dawned on me that you said that a good spin-off project of this, it could be identifying pickup locations for evacuation for folks that don't have cars. In New Orleans, a similar project was done, different than this, but a lot of overlap. And we identified 16 spots that were called evacu spots, and those became the official pickup locations for those that didn't have access to transportation for evacuating. So that might be a really neat follow-up project to this.
And also as a follow-up to what we were just talking about, the evacuations and helping people during emergencies, St. Lucie County, as other counties, including Martin County, where I am, we had people that had to immediately react to emergency situations, tornado warnings. We can't plan for a tornado, we can plan for a hurricane, but after we've learned stories of people wanting to help their loved ones who lived in a mobile home community, get them evacuated as soon as possible for a hurricane, but not knowing that there was a tornado on the way. Transportation, maybe we need to look at better planning for evacuation of communities with pre-manufactured homes, mobile homes and such, and how we can do work with as transit agencies to get that a better reaction time to get people out, because we're learning some of the lessons learned is before the storm, there can be emergencies. Before the storm hits the East Coast, in this case, we had very bad things that happened because of tornadoes that if those people had reacted, I know as a common thing a day before, should be prepared for tornadoes, that type of thing. And what can we do in the transportation world to prepare for that? It's a deep subject, but it's very local.
Well, I've also noticed in the last two hurricanes, both Milton and Helene, that we received almost significantly more intense rainfall the 3 to 4 days before the hurricane hit because of the outer bands than we did during the actual storm itself. And I think that some of that heavy rainfall that was basically, 2-3 days out, preceding the storm was more intense and may have caused more localized flooding than the rainfall that we received during the actual hurricane.
Are there any other observations or questions?
Okay, I have another question unrelated, but to the crowdsourcing. Because the Gainesville study was a college town, you were able to talk with college students, the population that majority lives in that area. How do you address crowdsourcing? And I'll think of, because I'm familiar with Palm Beach County, and if you were studying a new mobility hub in Western Delray Beach, where there's a large plus 55 community, they might not be technically savvy to pick on a map and move locations around. How do you address that? There would have to be more in-person surveying, getting people to, I'm sure they'd be interested in getting a free gift card to Publix, but how do we get them to, answer questions about where they think a mobility hub would be convenient for them, where they can get to their medical doctors, where go grocery shopping, instead of relying on their transportation of their single car vehicle.
I think all of us view this as a tool that's useful as an input to a broader planning process that includes stakeholder involvement and public involvement. I don't think any of us think this should replace on the ground public involvement. That's still necessary, but it was kind of, we're always interested in new technologies and new tools, and it was interesting to having that interactive mapping component for the populations that are comfortable doing that. But I agree with you. If I was going to do a Palm Beach County wide mobility hub study, I would definitely want to have in-person stakeholder meetings and in-person public participation sessions. I wouldn't want to try to replace that with, not everyone's comfortable with these kind of interfaces. Did you want to add, Serena, to that?
No, I completely agree with you. I think if the tool were meant to be robust for all populations, it would need some tweaking, but this was a really important first step. Like we were in the field with the tablets and having people, move the pins using that, but we were mainly at bus stops and, the main train station. So time was also limited, so that was another factor. So yeah, I think it was an excellent opportunity to try something like that a little bit in the field. My colleagues at FAU know that I'll be following up with some focus groups. Now, this is a completely different project, funded differently, but we have some outstanding questions from our research, and I'll try to follow up on some of those. And so stay tuned.
I think it's important. If anyone wants to stay up to date with the follow-on research project, please reach out to Serena and she can keep you connected, because we're basically building on the results of this project, but with a more qualitative research effort to get to answer some of the questions that weren't answered in this project.
I just put my email in the chat, but you can, the invite to this meeting, of course, has my info on there too. You could just respond that way.
But I wanted to add, we also did the interactive survey in West Palm Beach as well. We cut the survey in about half. We significantly shortened it because we thought it was too long for the average transit rider, actually just about anyone. But we were surprised that they got so many responses at University of Florida. I guess you've got all those students who are used to doing their homework. So we cut the survey in about half, but still asked some similar questions and got a pretty good response, a couple hundred, 500 plus responses in West Palm Beach. All right, well, thank you everyone for coming to this webinar.
I guess I have one last question, maybe for those of you that are kind of working in the field. It sounds like Lucine is. I'm not sure if others are, but one of the things about this is that the idea of a mobility hub, may need to be implemented and or funded with resources that may not necessarily be from the transit agency exclusively, right? So I guess my question for Lucine or others who work there is like, could you see this as a useful tool as a transit agency to go to the city or the county and to say, hey, we identified this particular location. Could we collectively work together to bring in funding, to implement this? And that could be not just transportation, but also include like placemaking with some of those last mile enhancements, maybe even, putting in bike lanes or crosswalks or landscaping, things like that.
I definitely think there has to be public-private partnerships. Like, for example, locally here, I participate in the CHIP, which is the Community Health Initiative Program. So I get to interact quarterly with folks in the health department, different agencies that they want to reach certain folks to tell them about 211 and how a mobility hub could be more than what we talked about, which is very important today, but it could have those resources available, whether it's visual resources that they can see where they can go next when people are hopeless. It's a great communication tool too, a hub. But yes, definitely working with the local municipalities and stuff on expanding the first mile, last mile accessibility. Working with the CRAs, the community redevelopment agencies in local communities. A lot of them but they work in isolation, but not on a, how do you say, more regional connectivity. I know the Treasure Coast here, we do a great job planning regionally for transit, but we're so connected to Palm Beach County to the south, and we lack a lot of times connectivity for people, especially the transportation disadvantage, to go across regionally to other counties. We need to work on that too.
I just read a study this morning that said that businesses located near electric vehicle charging get more business. And I'm wondering if the same might be true for mobility hubs. If you build a mobility hub, there's a private incentive that if you have a mobility hub, that the stores near that mobility hub maybe get more business as people are traveling from one place to another and want to pick up a drink or whatever, pick up a sandwich.
I
Yeah,
can't
thank
speak
you.
to that because most of the charging stations in Martin County are at Wawa's. Now there's not these mobility hubs. So, I mean, of course that increases business for Wawa's, but I think also Wawa's is an untapped advertising for transit, because when you sit there and gas up your car or charge your vehicle, there could be a lot of opportunities for bulletins, bulletins saying in promoting transit and other mobility.
That's, first of all, thank you for the connection to the public health. Something I didn't think about. That's very useful. And also very interesting that Wawa is the location where people are charging up their cars. I didn't know that either. That's very interesting.
Yeah, they're one of the big providers of charging services, interestingly enough.
I suspect that most places like gas stations, I mean, I don't know this for a fact, but I've always heard that they don't make very much money selling gas. It's just something to get people in the door, and then they make money selling, sandwiches and coffee and sodas. So maybe it doesn't matter whether they're buying gas or charging their vehicles, they're still coming in and buying things.
And Wawa's is a great private partnership to, like, if you're having a public outreach event, they're willing to support that event with materials, whether it be beverages, refreshments and such. They work very closely with local agencies when they're promoting certain events. So
it's good to know.
Right. Well,
thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for everyone for coming and finding out.
And thanks to Louis for joining us from Belgium.
Yeah, it's not morning for me. It's the end of the day.
Thank you so much. Thanks
It
for a
looks like
great
a sunny
webinar.
day.
Okay,
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.